For over 5,000 years, a single land has faced the full force of history. Empires rose with absolute confidence. They marched toward it with armies, weapons, and ambition. They believed they would conquer it, reshape it, erase it. And for a moment, it always seemed like they had succeeded. Cities burned to the ground, palaces collapsed into dust, rulers were executed, entire systems vanished overnight. To any outside observer, it looked final, permanent, inevitable. But then, something strange would happen. The conquerors would stay, they would rule, they would build, and slowly, almost invisibly, they would begin to change. Their language would shift, their traditions would evolve, their identity would blur, until one day they were no longer outsiders. They had become part of the very civilization they once tried to destroy. This is not just a story of survival. This is the story of a civilization that turned defeat into dominance and loss into legacy. Long before the rise of famous empires, before Rome, before Greece, even before the earliest dynasties of Egypt reached their peak, the Iranian plateau was already alive. This was not an empty land. It was a meeting point of worlds, a bridge between East and West, a corridor of movement, trade, and ideas. Early human communities here didn't just survive, they organized, they built, they experimented. Archaeological discoveries reveal something remarkable: advanced settlements, intricate pottery, and signs of structured societies dating back thousands of years. This was not a forgotten region of history, it was one of its starting points. Among the earliest known powers here was a civilization in the southwest, strong, organized, influential. They were not isolated tribes, they were a political force. And in this region, something extraordinary happened. One of the earliest known diplomatic agreements in human history was formed. Think about that. At a time when most of the world operated through conquest alone, this land was already experimenting with negotiation, with agreements, with the idea that power could be balanced, not just imposed. This was not just the birthplace of civilization, it was the birthplace of strategy. Then came a turning point. New groups began arriving from the north, moving across vast grasslands and rugged terrain. They were not settlers in the traditional sense. They were survivors, nomads, warriors shaped by movement and hardship. They brought with them a new identity, a new language, a new worldview. They called themselves Arya, a word that meant noble. But this was not just a name, it was a statement, an identity rooted in honor, strength, and belonging. As they settled into the land, something powerful happened. They didn't erase what came before them, they merged with it, blending cultures, adapting traditions, building something entirely new. Their language evolved, becoming part of a vast family that would later include Greek, Latin, and many modern European languages. And the land they now called home? They named it Iran, the land of the Aryans. But their greatest contribution was still yet to come, because what they would create next would change not just their own civilization, but the way all of humanity understands existence. Somewhere within this land, a new way of thinking emerged. It was not just a religion, it was a revolution. It introduced a concept so powerful that it still shapes how we think today. The world, it said, is not random. It is a battlefield, a struggle between opposing forces, good and evil, truth and deception, order and chaos. But the most radical idea was not about morality, it was about time. Until this point, most civilizations believed in cycles, endless repetition, birth, death, rebirth, over and over. But this belief system broke that cycle. It declared that time moves forward, that history has a direction, that there is a beginning and there will be an end, a final moment when everything is decided. This idea would spread across cultures, influencing major religions and philosophies. It would shape how humanity understands purpose, judgment, and destiny. In a way, this civilization didn't just exist in time, it helped define it. Then, from within this land, a leader emerged who would transform it forever. He didn't just build an empire, he built a system, a vision, a way of ruling that was unlike anything before it. He united divided tribes, stabilized vast territories, and expanded across continents. But what made this empire different was not just its size, it was its philosophy. Instead of destroying the cultures it conquered, it preserved them. Instead of forcing unity, it allowed diversity. Different languages, beliefs, and traditions coexisted under a single system. Roads connected distant lands. Communication became faster than ever before. Administration reached levels of efficiency that would influence empires for centuries. At its peak, this empire governed millions. It was not just powerful, it was organized, resilient, innovative. But like all great powers, it carried within it the seeds of its own collapse. From the west, a new force began to rise, young, ambitious, relentless. An army driven by speed, strategy, and an unstoppable leader. They advanced rapidly, defeating everything in their path, and eventually they reached the heart of this empire. The battles were brutal, the resistance was fierce, but in the end, the empire fell. Its cities were destroyed, its symbols erased, its power dismantled. To the outside world, it looked like the end of a civilization. But once again, history would take an unexpected turn. The conquerors stayed. They ruled the land. They controlled its resources. But something began to happen beneath the surface. Slowly, quietly, they began to change. They adapted local customs, learned the language, respected the traditions. The culture they had conquered began to reshape them. Within generations, their identity had transformed. The empire was gone, but the civilization remained, not through force, but through influence. The centuries that followed were filled with conflict. New empires rose, old enemies returned. Battles were fought across deserts, mountains, and plains, but the pattern never changed. Even in defeat, the civilization endured. Even under foreign rule, its identity survived. It adapted, evolved, absorbed. It became something stronger than an empire. It became a system that could not be erased. Then came a new wave, a new belief system, a new force rising from the south. It spread rapidly, bringing with it a new identity and structure. At first, it seemed like this would finally replace everything that came before it. But once again, the same pattern emerged. The civilization adapted. It absorbed elements of the new system while preserving its core identity. Language survived, culture evolved, influence expanded. The conquerors changed more than the conquered. Out of centuries of chaos and transformation, a new structure began to form, a renewed sense of identity, a redefined nation. Leaders emerged who understood one thing: survival was not enough.
The civilization needed unity. It needed clarity. It needed a strong, unmistakable identity. And so it rebuilt, stronger, more defined, more resilient than ever before. So why did this civilization survive when so many others disappeared? Why did it endure invasions, collapses, and transformations that would have erased any other culture? Because it mastered something unique. It didn't resist change, it absorbed it. It didn't just survive history, it adapted to it. And in doing so, it became something far more powerful than an empire. It became permanent. Empires tried to destroy it. Instead, they became part of it.